Oh yeah. You know what time it is.
Awesome. I'm just gonna leave Schmooster big as long as Schmooster wants to do that.
Glorious.
Welcome to this week's What the Heck, where we talk about nothing. Alright, so I'm gonna keep playing, and y'all just tell me what to do, or just critique it. I don't care. You can do the old man Muppets critique if you want. If I want to get drunk, I have White Claw. If you know what White Claw is, you know that's a joke.
Ooh, I like that.
I feel like I shouldn't point out my own flaws, but I feel like every single track I write is a build-up.
I mean, that's not a horrible way to write a track.
And then there's no drop.
Okay.
But we'll try.
I noticed that it's exceedingly common for every track you write to be like a build.
To be like, oh yeah.
It's always what I should say, it's always ascending. The music always goes up. The bass line never goes down in pitch. It always goes up in pitch.
Yeah, I like going up in pitch because sometimes it makes me feel happier. But I don't know that it always comes across that way, so
There was the drop.
I apologize. I changed out my mixers 10 minutes ago.
Sounds good. I'm not hearing there's not a lot of line noise. Not that I would be able to tell with your your synthesizer.
Yeah, I pulled the maker heart out of the mix, so that now I'm only using it to listen to the laptop and my music at the same time. That's it. And I'm not hearing any line noise anymore, so somewhere in there was a ground loop.
Enthusiastic electrons with kind of a three-quarter rhyme there. Half rhyme.
Hey Data's mom, tell your mom I said hi. Hey enthusiastic electrons.
Tell your mom I said hi.
That came off more rude than I expected. I was just trying to be friendly. Yeah, it's a good track, Tim. Fly to the Concords, hip hop hippopotamus. Synthesizer since we started playing, other than to adjust the volume knob. I might as well be playing an MP3 at this point. I just realized something.
What'd you realize?
I feel like I don't know how to use my own equipment today. Because on my attack release envelope generator, 2.5 centimeters wide, if you're curious, it's got a knob that goes from negative to positive, and I'm pretty sure I'm running it through an attenuator after it, so I could have just used this knob instead. Yeah, it's gonna be a good night. It's like almost the weekend, right?
I mean, kind of. It's kind of halfway.
Yeah, we're basically there. Actually, I think Wednesday is sort of like, if you call Wednesday halfway there when you're talking about the work week, it's sort of like hiking down into the Grand Canyon, getting to the bottom and being halfway there because you have to hike back out.
Ah.
I like this. I like this stereo. That's the reason I replaced my whole mixer.
Oh, there is stereo. Yeah, I hear it.
Yeah, controlled by this little LFO.
So, how exactly do you do stereo with voltage?
Ooh, that's a good question. In this case, I mean, there's mixers that do it, which I want, that I don't have, but I'm using that. This is through the Ikari.
Oh, okay.
Ikari, yeah. So it's just going into the stereo spread input with the spread pretty wide, and then it just makes magic.
Yeah, it magically makes it stereo. I know people use like the performance mixer from WMD, and they're able to you can just put voltage in and control the panning directly.
Yeah, totally, and that's one that I have my eye on. After a week or two ago, you're silent, Schmooster. I don't know why. I haven't muted you.
Oh,
Oh,
you kind of
Oh,
burbled in right there. Hold on, you came in a little bit.
yeah.
oh, really? Oh, I think that the Chrome thing is weird then.
Oh, well, we can hear you sometimes.
I'm going to have
It's
to contribute through this mostly.
it
Yeah,
does
you can
sound a
use the
little
sign.
muffled. It sounds a little muffled, or is that only me?
It
It's
might be
it's
my voice.
Is there like a heater or something going on? It feels like audio compression is happening, like when it tries to take out background noise. Like, is your
It's
voice the
probably
same pitch as the
it's got
background
the
noise?
echo cancellation and noise suppression on replay.
I can't understand you.
I'll turn off noise. I think it's related to the Restream Chrome thing.
Oh, well, you sound good now.
Well, that might be because it's not trying to compensate.
Huh.
Yeah, now it sounds a lot better.
Huh.
Oh, now it's in portrait mode.
Cool.
That's
Well,
can't work out how to use this thing.
Ooh, man, that drum brute impact has a nice. It's just like instantly good drums, man. That's really cool.
it's cheating. It's cheating every time. It's really good drums. And you know what I figured out the other day? Again, having this for a year now.
Is that any better?
I can hear you, so I don't.
Yeah, that's fine.
Um, but what I'm going to do is turn the volume down on the drum brute while cranking. I'm going to crank it all the way up here. But it has some like really gnarly distortion when you crank the level way up on each, like all the way.
The burp came
Way.
through great, by the way.
Excellent. Good test.
I didn't realize I did that. All right. And I just can't stop using the data bender for this. One day I'll use it for something else, but
Yeah, I hear it like reversing the sound sometimes. That's really cool.
yeah, it's so cool with the drum. Yeah, I do like to walk it up. Let's talk about all of the cliches that I do actually. One of the things I like to do, like most of the time, things just start off as like, here, let's change the camera so it's extra dumb looking. I go, what note is this going to be? And be like, cool. And that's like the whole riff. I
That's
just go from there.
in the note of house, I think.
What was that?
That's in the note of house,
A.
something like that.
It's in
Well,
the note of Canada.
Well, it kind of has that resonance that house music is kind of, it's kind of has that resonance bass thing that what in fact, what is making that sound? What is that?
This one, I happen to be on the bass, so I've got some resonance on. Usually with the bass, I don't, but this time I did.
Oh, I love that.
But with this one, with this bass, I love having two oscillators, one an octave higher. And when I'm really feeling it, what I'll do is I'll
Make a
pitch
fifth.
it up. Yeah, make a fifth. And then you get that,
Yeah.
really get that, like, if I turn on just a little bit of,
Oh man.
right, like you get like instant every David Guetta song. Like,
Yeah. So that's
whatever he
only
says.
two oscillators, and they're just they both are going through they have their own filter as well.
No, it's through a single filter. The MS-20 filter is mixing them, and they're both going through the same filter. So there's not a ton going on there through an ADSR. Both pulse width, I believe. I did have this one on triangle for a while, but I like them both with pulse width modulation. It gets a little gnarlier sometimes. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's how you
I,
get.
I love square basses. I keep trying to use triangle. I keep trying to use other waveforms, and I just always go back to a square because you can do pulse width modulation, and it just has a lot of overtones, which is really good for low notes because then you have a more complex harmonic series.
and I agree. And if I start with a square, like there's pros and cons. Starting with a square is fun to do a lot of subtractive stuff too. Um, but if you, this is another very beginner mistake I made a long time ago. It's like when I put the square wave through distortion, it basically does nothing. It usually just makes it worse. And the only way to get it back to happy distortion is to put a filter ahead of the distortion with resonance to where it's no longer a square wave. Yeah,
Yeah, there's nowhere else to go.
stupid.
You can't
You can't clip like a square wave.
you overdrive a square wave and it's like there's nowhere to go.
It's just
Yeah.
a crappy sounding square wave still.
See, I've got the FM aid,
What was that?
which I've got the FM aid
The,
and the
the oh,
pills, which is a PLL thing, and I think between them they predominantly deal in square waves somehow, but I don't understand the mechanics. So I just feed them with everything and see what
that's
happens.
good. I mean, that's cool. I'd like to. I want to hear that. When you're messing with that, ping me. Enthusiastic Electrons asks, "What's the best shape to distort?" I think I know the answer to it, but I want to hear it from an expert. So, Robbie, you're up.
I, I'm gonna give a cop out answer because obviously it's personal taste. Um, but for me, the answer is the same as everything in synthesizers, and that's the best shape to distort is a constantly moving shape because that's what makes synthesizers so cool is that you should never be static. Things should always be in flux. It's about the movement, not about the destination. So if you have a constantly changing shape and you distort that, then the distortion makes that constantly changing shape change as it changes. So
Yeah, it's about
Yes.
interesting things, things which generate interest somehow
Right.
and
That's a good
have
one.
good
So,
results.
like, if you had, I think if you had one of those, like an oscillator that can smoothly move between shapes, like between square and triangle, for example, that would be, I think, a really good one to use control voltage and then put it through a distortion because you would hear like the distortion sort of hit on and off between those waves. But I think anything triangle-ish tends to feel the most distorty. But I don't know.
yeah, I mean the obvious go-to answer is like a sine wave because
Right.
you have everything to gain. You know, everything. That's what's going to change. That's what's going to needs to change the most. It has the most room to change, but that's kind of the easy answer.
Yeah, and I will say the sine wave is like my favorite wave in theory. It is like totally my least used wave.
Yeah.
And it's not because it's bad, it just happens to be on the oscillators I built. Uh, it has significantly lower output, which makes it just trickier to sort of mix in when I'm doing stuff. That's about it. I do love it on the mini log. It makes some of my favorite sort of like we called this patch Sine Lord.
But there's like a square in there too.
Personally, I think that
It's
there's
just all sine waves, but there's some movement. It just
Oh,
sounds a
okay.
little squarey.
That's
Um,
there's
great. That's an awesome sound.
there's definitely some extra wave which has yet to be discovered. Certainly,
there's only
there's
so
some,
many shapes at the line, you know. Like,
yeah, but sometimes maybe it has to bend into another dimension and it looks like our standard waves, but it has extra properties.
what?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
Three-dimensional wave.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Actually, have you seen that software called Wave Edit? That it's designed for you to use in with wavetable synths, right? So wavetable is where, for those watching that don't know, wavetable is where you basically have a computer and you draw a small waveform, and that's your waveform. Um, and with this application, you can actually draw it like with your mouse the waveform, and it'll show you in a graph the relative strength of the overtone series, or you can click the overtone series and drag up the strength of the harmonic series, and produce the appropriate waveform. That's
Right.
You
super
can
fascinating.
you can
And just
discover banks of wave files that people have created using this tool off their website as well.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the other thing. Yeah, you can share them, and it works really well with like the Swan from 4MS and a bunch of other wavetable synths that I have none of because I want a wavetable synth.
I
well,
pronounce
I was just gonna demo.
SW.
The closest I have is this Micro Freak,
Well, that's
but I can like navigate. Like this is me picking different wavetables, but like on the wavetable, you can hear like as I go through the
It morphs through
wave,
it, right?
like it's morphing through the various waves in the table, which is really cool. So it's one of those that like super boring if you're not animating any of that, but if you're like using an envelope or LFO or something to animate that wavetable, it gets really cool.
I
uh,
had the experience of using the piston Honda at Perfect Circuit, and I was just playing around with it, and I was like, none of these sounds sound great. All of these sound kind of crappy. I kind of hate it. And then I took an LFO and I plugged an LFO into the waveform control, and I was like, well, now this is my favorite module, and I want to buy it. I want to buy it like right now. It just instantly fell in. I went from hating it to loving it in the time it took me to plug in one LFO.
Yeah, and that's I feel that way about a bunch of like there's a bunch of modules I've either made or used that I would say were like kind of boring at first like that, and then I did like one thing like plug in an LFO. Like the the iCurry is a great example of one that like as much control voltage as you want to pipe into the various inputs, like fill them up and it'll sound great. Like that thing just only gets better. Um, yeah.
That's kind of the schmooster approach too, is
oh
to
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
fill
mean, the
fill as
only
much CV as you can.
it works in this case. It works really well. I think the only two jacks I don't have plugged in are the right input because I'm only putting in one channel.
Yeah, but
Uh,
my approach kind of
yeah,
comes down to creating your own stone from which to carve something from. Like, there's a lot of slicing away of stuff that needs to be done with all of the bits and pieces that I found I can do, and it's all kind of in parallel at the moment, and I'm marching towards spreading it out and having it occur as separated events in time with a little bit more deliberation.
That's a really interesting approach. I think it's really cool to, because it's easy to start with like noise and then filter that and put in some resonance, and then you can do stuff with that. But you don't start with a noise signal. You kind of generate
Yeah,
not noise, but it's serving the same purpose that noise would, and then you can control it. I would love to like throw something like voltage block and do some really precise CV sequencing and like filter it or do something weird to like turn that the crazy
uh,
noise into. I love what you do. It's like nothing. It's like completely 180 degrees out of phase with what I do, and it's
yes.
it's like amazing to hear because it's like something that I could. I almost want to say I could never do that.
I'd say it's not yet musically oriented. It's it's technically oriented.
I don't know. I think it's good. There's lots of really good bits in there. Like there's lots of little happy accidents and things. Like
Oh
sometimes I
yeah,
forget to like end a stream when somebody stops and then I want to say blasted by Schmooster music because the volume level is usually higher than whatever I was listening to.
yeah, yeah.
But
I
sometimes like
let's do
there's
that.
really good things that I'm like, oh, I hope that repeats,
Sometimes it
and then
might.
it never does. So I think it is musical. It's just my expectations are like a stupid phrase
Well,
repeating,
no,
which is like every song I make.
um, I've got a problem in that I find um, I, I find certain patterns in music to be a distraction and to be too deliberately placed. And when I start to detect those in what I consider to be my background music, and it catches my attention too much, then I want to kind of suppress that and work out how to get rid of it somehow. It's a bit of a weird mechanic because I also want it to sound pleasant or like amenable, at least to me, while that's going on. But it's mostly like if I detect repetition, then I'll be like, oh shit, what's gone wrong there? Like it
That's
doesn't
the
make
opposite of
sense.
me. I totally like repetition, and I'm like, all right, I want to introduce a little bit of schmooster here, so like maybe I'll sequence this CV like.
Right.
But see,
Like,
that already sounds like a
yeah,
groove. That already
yeah,
has a groove to it, and
yeah.
that's so you've already disqualified yourself.
I know, but that's my like dipping my toe in the water. I don't like too much chaos
Well,
outside of my cable pile.
I don't really use. I think at the moment I don't use anything random apart from a bunch of maybe there's some random stuff happening on the nerd seat, but I try and avoid deliberate random stuff and try and have it all related somehow to each other, even if it's like a pitch controlling the wrong thing, whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, that's one of the things I really love Logic modules for is because they kind of give you I don't want to say random, but it kind of serves the purpose of random, but
yeah,
it's like a LFSR kind of random where um, it's a it's a predictable pattern of random, and then when you change your sequence or you change the voltage into your logic module, you get a different pattern out, but it's always related to the pattern in, and there's just something fascinating about doing something like that. Relative
the
randomness, that's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
Yeah,
the
relative randomness. My favorite is decorative randomness. So like the drums are the perfect example with the data bender where like I don't know what it's gonna do. It never does it the same, but it's good enough. Like it just feels decorative. It's not changing things. It's just like adding some sparkle.
My usual use of random is I use it on I set notes so that they don't always trigger, but only some notes. Like I did a reggae kind of a dub reggae track a week ago, and I particularly picked notes and I gave them kind of a low probability of triggering,
right.
um, so that it kind of gives it a unique vibe every time. Like the guy laid back and didn't play the one note, or it's kind of a Miles Davis kind of minimalism thing, but that's not really that's not really randomness as much as it's like a super controlled form of randomness.
Well, there's yeah. There's a lot of context where that is put in place by a given module and it works really well. It's constrained randomness, and there's nothing wrong with doing things that way. Like it makes good sense because unconstrained randomness is you know white noise.
Right, that's exactly right. There's an interesting. I think it's interesting that there's a lot, like on one end of the spectrum, you've got these real, what do they call it? What's the word? Strophic or whatever, when a song has like a chorus, verse structure. And that's distinct from like through composed, where it never repeats and there's never a verse or a chorus. Um, and but that's still very musical. And then there's a long way to go until you get to like white noise, which is just complete randomness, never, just completely unpredictable randomness. Um, but it's interesting that there's so much variety within that, and some of us are far on one end of the spectrum, and some of us are more on the other end.
Oh, so my um, hang on, we swapped places. That's strange. And we
Well,
can't.
you disappeared for a moment, and now you're back.
Oh, I can't hear Heck either. Can you hear Heck?
I do not hear him. I hear you just fine though. Can you hear me?
We're
Oh,
going
I
to have
had
to.
myself muted the whole time while I was trying to
Ah!
talk. Uh,
I thought we were
but
going
I
to have
did
to
not.
listen
Yeah, you
to
just disconnected for a second, so that's why you swapped places. But
Under My Umbrella. Eh, 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 eh.
enthusiastic electrons just said like they thought they preferred complexity to the point of seeming random over actual randomness, which sort of just like
Yeah, yes.
describes the enthusiastic sequence there. It's like complex. It's complexity. It's not random, but it feels very random when you're just listening to it.
So my case was supposed to be like a full-on live case. You know, you take it and you go and you perform something live, and it just seemed to end up being a thoroughly complex oscillator in multiple modules. Like it just makes noise, and it takes a lot of work to try and make it make less noise somehow.
You know what? The white noise just got me thinking about white noise a bit, and I every time I hear the phrase white noise now, I immediately think, oh, I wish I had a fixed filter bank. Because the first thing I would do is like mic up the heater behind me or sprinkler or whatever makes
Mhm.
consistent white noise, and then filter it out until it makes a specific tone, and then go from
There
there.
must be a film called White Noise. I'm sure there's a film called White Noise.
There's got to be some artist. It's probably a French film.
That feels like a future like horror movie,
Yeah,
sort of in the same genre
2005
as
horror movie.
us. What is it? Get Out.
I
It had
definitely, I've
Michael
def.
Keaton in it.
Oh, and White Noise, Michael Keaton.
I love Michael
Um,
Keaton.
I've definitely used uh, I've done that, but in a limited way. What you described with an equalizer or a fixed filter bank.
Yeah.
Um, I've done it, but in a degenerate form with a bandpass filter, so like one channel, right?
Yeah.
And I care really fucking carefully dial in the cutoff frequency so that it's exactly the frequency I want, so that I get this
Right.
crazy weird resonance right at the frequency I want, and it sounds awesome on like a snare drum sound or something like that.
Oh,
Yeah. See, that's what I want to do, and then have that as a sound source, like build a bass line or whatever it happens to be in terms of pitch range.
on your mini log, do you find the cutoff functions quite like that? Heck,
The mini log, you know what? It does have.
it seemed to me it's got a weird angle for that kind of slight sub-resonance sweet spot.
Well, it does have a nice filter. It's similar to the MS-20 filter in that it's got some really sweet resonance, but it's a little happier. It's a little more Icarus-like in terms of the
Right.
resonance. It's not as like harsh, but I don't. I think it is an analog filter. I don't think there's bandpass or anything on there, but that does
You
have me
tend to find
thinking
external.
the Micro Freak has a bandpass filter that I haven't messed with. So maybe I'll take a stab at pulling a Robbie on that one, because I can pipe in audio through it now, I believe, with some of the newer firmware. I think I can run it through the filter, which would do the trick.
I would love something which you can give like one input and get 3-band output and change the spacing of the two bands between them and have that all set.
I think that exists. I remember seeing it, but I
Yeah,
can't remember who made it. It was a Div Kid video, and he demonstrated this module, and it was like three filters in one.
oh, was
Uh,
it dual analog?
Maybe
It's not a stereo dipole, I don't think.
I
Of
can't
what that
recall.
analog?
I have no idea. The only I know nothing of fixed filter banks other than I've ogled some test equipment that's out of my price range. That's about it.
Well,
I guess I could do it in Ableton or something, but
I guess on this area the SMR's relevant, although the lack of the lack of obvious cut-off resonance is a little bit weird. If there was an obvious cut-off on the SMR, then like I'd feel more confident talking to people about it as a filter. But
Mm.
it
Yeah,
doesn't drive in the same way.
it needs resonance in my opinion, or I'm not gonna buy it. Resonance that gets a little crazy. Again, I love the MS10s. Resonance.
Oh man, listen to that. I
Yeah.
love it when it just does that wah 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 like
It's
spaceship
so good.
noise.
It's
Yeah.
so good. Um, yeah. I honestly, that's like the main reason I will never part with this is the filter. Like, the oscillators are fine, but the filter is magic.
Yeah.
So I know. I was thinking about the put one audio in and then get three things out at different frequencies. And I know. So this is something else. This isn't the filter I was thinking of, but I know noise engineering makes a distortion unit called the Seca and the Seca does you put one input in and you get a high, mid, and low output, and then you can control the drive individually. You can control the distortion
Right.
individually on
Right.
high, mid, and low.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's a good analog.
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm like trying to think of creative ways to do it other than like mult an oscillator.
Well, I mean that's like
But yeah,
the basic version of it, but
Yeah,
the whole point is that you would control the drive with CV for
right.
each one individually, and now you've got this super animated, interesting waveform doing all kinds of craziness.
Yeah, that'd be fun to play with. That's one of those things that I'd love to just try, like for a couple weeks to see if I liked, and then buy it. I guess VCV Rack's perfect for that. If I
so
could find something similar there.
did you guys have a phase where you weren't using sequencers much, and then you did use sequencers more, and you had to adapt your routines so that you had separated out voices and not a complex mishmash of stuff? Did you, or do you follow either track specifically? Am I
I mean,
speaking
I can
words?
I can answer that. No, I haven't because I have
Right.
mostly used sequencers. The closest to that I've come is like when I switch sequencers and it's an entirely different workflow. But
Right.
I tend to use sequencers for everything. So
So when you consider your work, are you thinking in terms of a distinct bunch of voices which are essentially separate and maybe mixed somewhere down the line, but they do their own thing and they're not really connected except by how you tell them to be connected up front from the sequencer? And
yes, for the
really
most
different to
part,
them.
with the exception being that I have the evil eye now up there, and that's an 8-step sequencer that is, other than it starts at the same time, is completely divorced from my main sequencer, and that just runs, so it sort of does its own thing. But
On the same clock, right?
but yeah, it's on the same clock, but I have it right now switchable. So if I click this, I can like do some cool things with it. Like you saw, I can crank
Oh
up the
yeah,
speed.
I saw it
Yeah.
light up, and oh yeah, look at
Oh,
that.
So I can switch it, which is really nice because I can get the like really sort of intense sounds with it, depending on what its CV is touching, I guess.
I've got to say, I am leaning so comfortably on the arms of this chair now.
You got the best chair, worth
I'm,
the investment, man. Very good.
it's the best chair. I'm very happy with the best chair. I will have it. I will take it. I will not eat for 2 months, but
I mean, I just did the same thing. I've been sitting on an IKEA chair for years now,
yeah, same.
and
It was
I
hot and
hurt.
my elbow.
So I was like, I'm getting that one Herman Miller chair that everyone likes. Used obviously on eBay, and hopefully it works. But
I,
yeah,
I tried to get one of these used, and then the guy backed out on eBay and said, "No, sorry, it's gone." And then it's still there on eBay.
you got an old i7, but you don't use modules. That yeah, I actually haven't had a ton of luck on VCV. I do have a new work computer that I might try it on, but uh, I'll be talking to them first before I do that because it's got the M1 chip, and that so far everything M1 has flown on that machine.
The trick is just don't configure it or expect it to do multi-threading, and then push it to the point where it starts to crackle, and then that's your limit.
I mean, I don't have none of my computers are slouches, but I think the performance of VCV is just pretty much atrocious on Mac at least.
Get into visuals. Do visuals in OBS. They're fine.
Visuals, yeah, maybe so. I don't know.
Mm.
I like my visuals right now. They're pretty basic, but they do the job.
What your face?
Uh,
You
Empty.
you write your
Not
name
quite.
across the screen
So
sometimes.
that's done. Right.
I
Okay.
do this thing sometimes too. I like that a lot. I guess it's
I
I
like
not
thought you
even
meant like
pointed at.
right now, the seconds.
Yeah.
I like the sans serif font.
Wow, that sounds terrible.
I mean, it's not terrible. It kind of sounds like you know, catching evil Pokemon or something. I don't know. It's the evil dungeon level.
Anyway, I like the I like the lower phi visualization, so probably stick to. I mean, if I can find a good
Hmm.
digital one, I'll do that too, because digital can be pretty dang cool too.
Yeah, I've been using I've been experimenting with Winamp version 2 from about circa 25 years ago. It has this awesome visualization plugin called AVS, and it turns out it works with the line in audio. And so it can do this cool visualization, and it looks great.
That was what pushed me over the edge.
I,
So
I don't know what you mean.
with,
The-
with
what?
messing around with visuals,
Oh,
um, for a while, I was quite what's the word? It's not jealous, but appreciative of Ben Brown's cubes,
Hmm.
pure data. And so I've been searching for a suitable method that feels like I can work with it somehow. And I've landed on a few extra effects in OBS, which would have been nice to find earlier, and the Praxis Live environment, which lets me do some sort of processing sketches and a whole lot more.
So let me ask you about your Streamlab or Stream Effects or whatever. What's it called? The plugin you're using in OBS? What's the name?
Stream OBS, and if you're on OS X, apparently you need 10.15, and you need the latest version 27 of OBS to be able to get StreamFX working.
I'm not
It's
on
like
Mac.
it's bleeding edge experimental style. I say
Hmm.
bleeding edge. It's probably last year, but
let me look
bleeding
it
edge.
up. Stream FX, right?
Yeah. OBS StreamFX.
Yeah, yeah.
So let me ask you this: Does that Stream Effects thing does it respond to music in an interesting way, or is it just kind of does it make pretty pictures and then all the
Uh,
music reactive stuff is programmed in that other application?
there is a program plugin Python script called MIDI to OBS. There are also various OSC to OBS control script thingies. But the one I've landed on and the one I've configured the most is MIDI to OBS, mainly because it's got a generic control setting. So I can hop through even if it's an undefined layer or source or whatever they're called. I can hop through each of those, find a recently changed parameter, tap in what MIDI control should affect that. It does a MIDI learn as well, and then run it from there. So MIDI to OBS gives control over parameters in OBS. Stream Effects happens to do some really nice things that OBS currently doesn't do. And it'd be really nice if they rolled them upstream when they were stable somehow. Shaders specifically. So I've ended up learning shaders a little bit, which is fun.
Yeah.
But it's not music.
Ooh, that's a low one. Listen to that. Ooh. Oh man, listen to that. The resonance on that is gnarly.
Yeah, what the hell? There was a plan here, Robbie. What do you want? We corrupted the thing with talking.
What was that?
We've corrupted the plan with talking.
Yeah. It's all right. It's fine. It's a talk show. Accidents happen.
Right, okay, go. Patch. Now, quickly, hurry. Right, no
What
time for drink. Patch.
what did you just do right there? What were you? Was that Ikari as well?
No, that was all Cosmo. That is an MS-20 filter with the resonance cranked pretty high, as you pointed out.
Hexmo.
Outside of the filter, well, there's a couple of things going in the filter. One is a triangle wave, and one is a square wave an octave down, which normally sounds like, I guess, let's see, like this. Hold on. Kind of meh. But if I turn the resonance way up, and then I pipe it through distortion, which is where you get that sound, right? Because it's trying to do stuff. And then you get some serious saturation.
I love that sound of that. That's fantastic.
But it's mostly the filter because the distortion's not doing a ton, but it does saturate a little bit, which is pretty nice. Anyway, I like doing that. There's a very specific range on the filter that the distortion loves, and I try to stay there. It's almost the, what was I calling it? Like the vocal range where it sounds very formant-like.
Yep, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
It's funny how you'd think like, okay, I'll put this waveform through the distortion and it'll sound good, and it kind of doesn't. But then you put it through a filter, or one of my favorite things is putting it through a compressor right after the filter. Then suddenly you get this wild, insane sound. So you really got to chain things together.
Yeah, and to answer some questions, it's the MS-20 filter, so there's a bunch of clones of that in Eurorack, and there's a bunch you can make your own. There's schematics for it everywhere. This one's the Rene Schmitz filter, I believe. Yeah. And the distortion is a clone of the Rat fuzz pedal, the Proco Rat, that I turned into a Cosmo module right here. And I still need to add some CV controls to it, but it does the job pretty nicely. Yeah.
What happens if you use a compressor on CV?
What was that?
What happens if you use a compressor on CV values?
Compressor on
Well,
CV.
the thing is, there's typically like four values. There's attack, release. There can be threshold. There can be makeup gain that can be associated with it, and you can also control. You can do like a sidechain effect where based on one input, based on the input of sound one, it changes the volume of sound two. So like I call it like the radio DJ effect, where suddenly the guy on the radio starts talking and the music in the background gets really, really quiet suddenly. But as soon as he stops talking, the music comes back up. That's
Mhm.
that's a compressor that's it's compressing the music based on the volume of his voice.
Right, and that's similar to what a compressor will do, or an envelope generator will do to CV, I guess. An envelope generator to VCA or something, or a compressor. Um, yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
what I'm doing up here. I have a
it sounds
track
awesome.
release to compressor. Yeah.
What do you usually use that compressor for?
Me?
Uh,
No, I
who,
don't have one. Sorry.
I I typically only use it for sidechaining things. Like I have this Deep Space Pulsar, which actually may be retiring soon to Reverb, even though I love the crap out of it. But the
Then
endorphins,
oh,
Cockpit 2 has sort of replaced it. I'm gonna keep going with it for a while to make sure it's solid. But it's essentially my stereo mixer at this point. Um, and compressor, so it does a really nice job of side chaining to the point where it's like almost annoying like if I crank up the side chain too far, but it's really nice.
yeah, it's like it's definitely you don't want like it's just like anything, you don't want to overdo it because it gets annoying and ridiculous if you do it too much. But it's great. It's a great tool to have. I mean, it certainly sounds great, especially when you have some patches that have. I mean, the best thing is when you have a lot of bass going on, but you also have it like a kick drum sound. You can duck the bass every time the kick drum sound, and it punches right through the mix, and suddenly everything sounds great.
Yep, I typically only compress bass level things, sometimes other stuff, but like where the Megadrone is a good example.
Oh, listen to that! Oh my God, marry me! I love that sound.
Yeah, Megadrone, but with some ducking, and I can crank it up. That's just like pretty low.
Oh man, I love that.
Megadrone, yeah, so that one I duck a lot. Anything that, like, anytime I have sort of a steady bass that's just held notes, I'll start ducking it at some point because it's a pretty cool effect.
Yeah, I mean it's either that or start putting envelopes into a VCA that, but that's the same thing.
I've done that with my VCA and I didn't. I can do it. It just doesn't. It was very finicky when I did that. Like it wasn't. Like if I bumped something wrong, it was really hard to get it into a good place quickly. So that's why I wanted a compressor that I couldn't mess up. The Megadrone is a 10 oscillator. It's just 10 oscillators actually, and there's it's here. I don't know if you'll be able to see any better on that. No, of course. Yeah,
Oh,
underneath
oh,
all of
oh.
these wires,
What does
from
ambient 7
from
sound like?
here to here is a 10 oscillator Megadrone, and each of them is individually tuned. It does have CV control, but because they're very basic oscillators, and I have different capacitors in each one of those, they tune differently or at different rates, which means that when I have turned this master tune knob, you get the like. You get that like THX effect. So that's
Right,
what's going on there.
where
But
they
I
all
can't play it
detune at
like,
different rates. Yeah.
yeah, I can't like change it to F really quickly. I have to go in and tune every single one to F or whatever. And yeah, I didn't invent it. It's a Look Mum No Computer module,
Can you, can you see who that
40
detune
centimeters wide.
is? That a CV detune or is that a dial only?
It's just CV. It's voltage control for the pitch, but because of the way it works, because of the different, they all tune at different rates, or they all change their pitch at different rates with the same voltage. It
The
ends up as a
detuning is a
detune
feature.
or tune. Yeah,
Okay, right. I see. I see.
It's the
right.
detuning is like built into it.
It's like almost the main feature. Like it's great for drones and stuff. Like that's my like I don't know. That's my like bagpipe sound. Like I put that to a single note and then I play sounds around it, kind of a thing.
Because there's a on the cycle box there's a mega feature, but it sort of I think you turn up the ratio and it spreads the oscillators around the central point.
Yes, and it works. It functions very similarly. So what I can do is I'll turn that knob, that main tune knob, down just a little bit to where you get halfway, and then I'll tune it, all 10 knobs, all 10 oscillators to a nice pitch there, and then it works in the same fashion where if I turn it one direction or the other, it'll spread those apart just a little bit or a lot.
Okay.
It's like the punk rock version of the ensemble oscillator.
Yeah, yeah. I also built mine so that I could swap out the capacitors to different voltages, so or different capacitance.
Do you mean like hot swappable or?
Yeah, I just trimmed the legs off the capacitor and plug it in and into. I used just some sockets that I had lying around per capacitor, so I can swap them out. And if I remember right, I don't know if I do, but I didn't like some of the higher ranges I had going, so I swapped out some of those for the capacitors that gave me a little more low
Every
stuff.
single circuit board should be built that way.
No, it shouldn't. I actually have to. Like it's like 8 screws or something to get out, maybe 6, something like that. But it's enough to be annoying because sometimes one gets loose, so I have them like sort of taped in extra, and there's still one that gets a little loose. So like I can hear it right away when I turn it on if it's loose, and I flick the board a few times, and then it like works. Very
That's
punk
so
rock.
Cosmo. That's so Cosmo.
I'm like,
Cosmo AF.
okay, good. It's good for the rest of the night.
Sorry, you said annoying, and that reminded me.
To be annoying. That's perfect.
So yeah, what is this patch? What's the aim? What's the intent? What's happening?
Yeah, so thinking about performing live, so it's a semi-perma patch at this point,
Yep.
but always optimizing.
Does
So
it-
I've got.
Does it give you the opportunity to flex all of the hex muscle?
Yeah, I think everything in it is being used. So like, let's just go ahead like. So that's got like I've got an LFO voltage controlled for the speed, the rate of it, tied to the same envelope as the filter on this voice, but I've also got like phone dial going, reverb, distortion. So like this is the voice I use for lead stuff, so that's why it's very customizable. Like if I turn off that, so I can get quite a range just from that. So that one's got the most special effects. It's the specialist effects. Second voice just goes through this crazy filter thing,
Do you view that row, the top
and then
row,
through, I agree.
a
What was
voice?
that?
Do you view the top row as a voice, or are you just saying that because you're focusing on one module that happens to be on there?
No, the top. So the different rows, like they do have their different functions. This box is sort of a self-contained lead and bass if I want it to with the MIDI. Like this, if I'm only taking one box, I can take this and be happy. That box has more like utilities. Like this is pretty much all utilities with outside of the honk.
Utility honk.
Yeah. The bottom row is sort of a mix of utility. Like those are like bonus features. So like I can do extra sick bass if I've got this available. You know, I've got more filters. I've also got my Eurorack section in there. So that's how that's sort of set up. But I basically have 4 main voices. Well, 3 really are actual voices. So I've got like this weird one. That lead I talked about earlier, and then this one's usually like pretty bassy. And the Mega Drone. But the Mega Drone while I can sequence it, like it does have an ADSR connected to it, and that's what I just flipped on and off. I usually do it manually because it feels more fun.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
everybody likes to flick a switch.
yeah.
Mm,
Like I don't have to worry
yeah.
about hitting the correct pitch. Like I mean, I can play it on the keyboard. I think. Let's see. Like one of these does it.
Screaming at
Nope.
my
Nope.
MSP yesterday.
Maybe it's over here. I don't know. One of these can do it, but I don't know. I don't even remember because I mostly can just. What are you connected to? Anyway, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I have a question, and this is a general question. Um, I I I constantly take out every patch cable and completely repatch things and do things totally different. Sometimes I'll make a snare drum sound a certain way, sometimes I'll use another way. I've made bass sounds in like three or four. I usually use three or four different preferred ways to make bass sounds. I do all kinds of different patching. And so my question is, I- is that weird? And like how much do you completely unpatch and redo everything in a totally different way?
Very weird. You're wrong.
Very good. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Well, I'm also wrong.
Congratulations.
I'm also very weird and very wrong. I do unpatch quite often. I haven't recently for reasons that you're aware of. I'm trying to hopefully, maybe one of us will actually get to play at that thing. Um, but if not, the second I find out,
Funny.
there will be a live stream of me like hitting play on this and tearing everything apart. Not because I'm sad, because it's really fun to do. I think it is fun to pull all the cables out, and yeah,
Yeah.
my lead I almost always patch at the same time, so it just means plugging them back in. But oh well. Um, Sometimes I
I've
do
got
weird stuff differently.
halfway the past few times I've tried that. I've gone and unplugged things like stoically from the bottom left, moving across to the bottom right, and then I've got up to the next level, and I'm like, hang on a minute, all the clocks are in place, how I will put them in place. All those things are in place, how I will put them in place. I
I guess I
I'm
don't
not,
think about that too much because of MIDI.
yeah,
I'm just like I'm not gonna unplug the MIDI cable that often because
yeah, yeah.
there's only one spot it goes.
I, I pretty much have the little nerd acting as the twin of the Percal at the moment. Percal, Percal, that Befako drums thing. The yeah, the little nerd just sits next to it, and every time I change it away from that configuration, I'm not happy with it, and I put it back.
Mm.
So there's some rationality there that's
I mean, at some point, yeah. What was I gonna say? Yeah, I mean, I do. A Unpatching Eurorack is like the most fun ever compared to Cosmo because it's like you can almost just grab a fistful of cables and pull, and nothing bad happens. Like
you can
these
try.
quarter-inch jacks, they're like solid. You gotta like put a hand on the wall and pull. Like if I tried to, like this whole thing's coming if I pull.
I don't
Um,
like the idea of people keeping their cases vertical on that basis unless they have like an L-shaped base, like something to add some geometry to that kind of equation.
it's solid. Like these are just sitting on top of each other, and it's really solid. Like yeah, maybe a little kid
It's
could pull it
wobbling.
down, but
It's literally wobbling as you're moving it now.
that's okay. It's not gonna fall over. It's 20 centimeters deep. What
Yeah,
Eurorack case is 20 centimeters deep, other than Colin Benner's?
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Maybe with the lid on.
But I do like starting from scratch, even if I am gonna do the same thing. At least lens. I usually end up down different paths or going like, oh, I've been wanting to do this one thing for like a week now. Let's do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, somebody send me a do not tip vending machine sticker, please. That would be sick on the
Oh,
side. Um, Tilt, yeah. Uh, I mean, there have been a bunch of patches where I've tried stuff. Like you all saw me when I first got this. I was using this as like turning Cosmo into my interpretation of a drummer from another mother, which totally cured me of the desire from a drummer from another mother. Like, yeah, I want one, but I mean, I can also just make one. So um, that's pretty rad. Um, yeah, I love it. I do. There is module news. I just heard.
But
For me, at least, I get excited when there's new modules in Cosmo format coming out because that's almost like it's like once every 3 months or something horrible. Um, but on their horizon, there's a sequencer coming out, which I probably won't get because this Evil Eye is sick. Um, but more importantly, there is a MIDI uh, MIDI to CV drum module, which is designed, I think, for 16 channels, so 16 triggers out, which will be sick because that opens me up to more drum machine type things in this box because Robbie is almost right and keeping everything in the box is awesome. So I'll be able to sort of do that going forward,
I,
which
I
will be
had
really
this
cool.
discussion about a compressor specifically earlier on today with my friend, and they were foretelling the virtues of studio equipment compressors and how you can get a much cheaper one that'll do a much better job than what you could fit into a Eurorack module. And then they looked at the jelly squasher and they went, oh, actually, that's really nice. I can't, I can't fault that. Like maybe the cost, but like that's really nice. And I just went, yeah, if I have something out of the rack, I'm going to have funny cables going to and from it back into the rack, and it's going to be awkward and in the wrong place. So,
You just don't walk over there.
Just
what?
sacrifice that part of
I
the
look
room.
down and I'm like, yeah, there's a section I just don't put my feet now.
Yeah, okay. There are many of those sections. Most of them are filled with bottles, or they were until yesterday.
I mean, I think I am slowly able to. I'm really excited about this. Slowly able to reduce my dependency on this wall over here. So like, I guess like all of these machines, um, and be able to use this as essential. Like I
Yeah,
hardly ever make noise out of the SEO2 at this point.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, Microfreak
That's
I
it.
love because it's almost modular, but everything else I almost never touch. MS10 being the exception because it rules.
So I sort of, I followed that path and on a sort of smaller scale, gone all modular and then tried to integrate other things more as well. Like I had the mini log off for a while because it wasn't modular. I had the analog two pole off because it wasn't modular. The rocket wasn't plugged in because it wasn't modular. And slowly I've just brought those back in because I mean, they're a part of the studio. Like,
I love that you had them off because they weren't modular.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
not at all why I don't use them. I can just like get the sounds I want quicker
Well,
with
it
this a
was,
lot of the time.
early days fitting with the ethos of like we're the Earth Modular Society, so I'm going to just do modular things and focus modular, modular, modular. And, the word does not stop and no other words get an edge in. But after thinking about modular stuff for a while, I was like, hey, I've got all this other stuff I can also use. And then it went on from there. Um, I think Miles has got a really good approach in that his modular is a central, large, interesting, complex instrument, but it's an instrument in his array of instruments that he uses. And I'm also interested in seeing his future explorations and how dense they get.
Yeah, there's something to. I think it's really helpful to think of it as an instrument and less as individual
Yes.
modules. And I mean, obviously, that's not super common with a modular synthesizer, but it I think it is common to think of it that way when you have. There's a tendency to go that route when you have outboard gear, when you have a box that's sitting on the table next to your rack. You look at that box as a discrete box, which it is, But to me that's the biggest reason I'm not super interested in little standalone toys is because I don't want to get locked into thinking of it only as that box.
Well, they take up desk space.
That too, that's a problem too. Yeah, I mean my desk space is literally my dresser. That's where my synthesizer lives.
You can see like my desk space has.
Oh, we can't hear you so well.
Yeah, fix your microphone.
Oh yeah, there we go. You can see my desk space has grown up. Like I built
Yeah.
this for my like. There's a shelf here with a hinge on it, the board for these to sit on because I need a desk space. And also, I just like there's more access when they're vertical. Like I think actually vertical is the way to go, but that's me um, for controls. But yeah, I've been pretty careful. Like I think Robbie, you're right. Like I've been pretty careful about what I've acquired after a certain point. Like the Micro Freak and the uh, Minilog XD were both picked up because I wanted both polyphony and some pretty wide variety of capability, and both of them are very. There's a ton I can do in the box that I don't get bored with. But yes, they're their own instruments. I know they both have CVN and all that, but I never use it, so whatever. It's fine.
I want to ask actually, have you ever done patching horizontally? Have you ever laid a synth flat on its back or mostly flat?
I
I'm
thought you
glad
meant
you
two.
asked. Uh, all of the Cosmo boxes started off flat on their backs because I was testing out layouts before I put screws into the rails. I
Hmm.
played them for a long time flat. Some of my older videos are them flat on the back. And it is nice, but it's a different experience. Like Cosmo is by nature deep. Like it's 20 centimeters deep, right? So that's I don't know that deepish. When you put it on a table and you sit on a chair, all of a sudden you're like a little kid at a dinner table. So it's not as conducive to being flat and sitting, which I think that would actually not be too bad. But if I'm standing and it's at the right height, flat, it's okay. But I find the cables sort of fall down onto it and cover things up a little more. It looks like they're pretty covered here, but I mean, they're huge cables, so I can like quickly reach in and out of these giant gaps. Um, I don't know. I prefer that. And when I cut up some of these cables some more, the next time I do some soldering,
Mm.
like the more I cut them up, the less there's extra length that dangles, and they sort of stick out. And I don't know. I like that a little better than collapsing, but I think that's just a cable length thing, and you can do that with.
So for Marco, I just want to say there's a question
Oh,
about Cosmo. Cosmo is 5U Eurorack. It's the same as Eurorack in terms of like specifications, but it's in the 5U format and it uses quarter inch. Did you want to add anything else? You're the expert.
yeah, it's just bigger Eurorack basically with larger components. Yeah, it's using Eurorack power, Eurorack standards for voltages and all of that. Um, it's not new. I think it's also called Metric 5U, um, but I only ever hang out on the Cosmo forum, so I call it Cosmo. Yeah, what's going on, Schmeister?
I'm just
Let's.
I'm showing what flat horizontal cables end up being like.
Oh, see, there's plenty of room to reach in there and twiddle some things.
You can sort of see that there's some spaces, but I mean, but like that's just trapped. It
Yeah, yeah, it gets messy really quick. I have mine at probably a I don't know 30-degree angle. It's like angled up a little bit, but I've actually never done patching with my synthesizer vertical so that the cables would droop down with gravity. I've never done that, and I kind of want to try it out just to see if I hate it or
It's
not. Because
it's yeah, try it. I mean, I actually hated standing at first to the point where I got this really nice cable stand chair. Well, it started out as a chair. Now it just holds cables because I wanted to try sitting and playing, and at this scale, standing works, but I've also gotten really used to standing. It's a lot more fun for me. So, because like when I'm standing and I'm here, it's like music time. Let's go. I've got a standing mat, so my feet don't hurt. Yeah. So, and yeah, that's a rat's nest schmooster, but like kind of in a good way. I think it's awesome. That's an amazing amount of cables. Um, yeah. It's also hard to dance when you're sitting. I don't know. I kind of dance almost like, you remember the Numa Numa dude meme thing? Yeah, that's how I
So,
dance when I sit, and it's a lot of fun. It just looks goofy. It's fine.
yeah, I'm gonna go the camera.
But yeah, I like standing. Yeah,
Somehow.
I don't know that it's better or not. I was sort of forced to out of circumstances. Like I couldn't reach. Like I'd be over here playing and sitting, and I just like need to reach that oscillator to tune it, and then it's like really awkward because I got to get off this tall stool and not knock things over. So yeah,
Yeah, I'm considering looking into some kind of something like a music stand, but a music stand would be totally insufficient. But something like that to be able to a portable stand so that if I ever have to bring it anywhere, let's say I'm performing modular on the
right.
spot in a park or something, and I need to be set up. I'm looking into that. I just started looking into
Um,
that. So if
So
anybody
this
has
is
any
like a
so,
knowledge,
stupid idea, but like
I know the
maybe like an
answer.
artist easel. Like
No,
easels are pretty sturdy.
you want a magician's table
magician's table, because they have to support a ton of weight and be very sturdy. That makes sense.
and they
Ah,
normally come in suitcase format
yeah.
because it just has to look like a basic thing you carry with you, and then wham, you've got a table.
I suppose another thing I really liked about standing
I'll
when
find
I
you a
was
link.
watching folks on YouTube is I got a better, not always, but I usually got a better picture of what was going on because I could see the synth better. Like, there's a bunch of performances that I think, in my mind, that like the videographer is doing their best, but like I don't care about the mountains. I want to know what the dude is doing. But their modular is horizontal, so like all you get are the cables sticking up, which I guess looks pretty cool, but you can't see anything. I don't know.
So how would you? But you, the only way to fix that would be to tilt it towards the audience, or go back to the audience so that your backside is facing the audience
Right,
and
and
they're
that's how I'd
looking at you.
perform. Yeah, so when I if I perform someplace like Cosmo and my controls are going to be facing the audience and I'm not, but I'm also in a position where I'm sequencing things, so like I can just turn around and talk or whatever, right? Like I don't have to be facing my instrument the whole time. So like I don't know, that's what I would do. Um, and then I don't have to look at their faces when they're bored, just like the internet. I forgot I was
Sick,
wearing this
sick
hat, or I'd
burn.
be wearing a different hat right now.
Different hats. Oh,
um,
infinite. Right. Did you swap? No, I just didn't read that.
play facing. Yeah, I would love. I want to play facing away from the audience, but with like some sick visuals, like from the oscilloscope, blasted everywhere. I don't know. That's my vision.
Yeah, I mean, would you bring like a projector and then try to project it on something? Or
Yeah, it sort of depends on the scenario. If it's like a medium, like if it's not a very dark room, which would be my preference, then I'm not gonna do any visuals because they just sort of look washed out, and I don't have the funds to carry like a very powerful, really bright projector. Like the kind of projectors you need to make things crispy and like decently lit rooms, or even just a little bit lit, are pretty up there in price, power, expense. They're just too much. So it would have to be a pretty dark room.
and they tend to be a little bit delicate as well.
Yeah, they're very delicate because of the bulb is very sensitive. Um, yeah, Critter and Guitari have a sick visual box. Is that the IZ? I think it's the IZ.
Oh,
Um,
EYESY.
yeah.
Yeah, that thing is really interesting. Actually I think who has one? Somebody has one.
Ooh, I just saw. It was. Is it?
CK Sample has one.
Yeah, this guy right here has one, and you've seen a lot of those visuals. There's also that module. I'm totally forgetting the name of that does. It's got to be like a 14 HP module Euro rack that also is doing
Oh,
incredible visuals.
Hypno
Yes.
Circuit Sleepy or whatever. Sleepy
Yeah.
Circuit's Hypno.
Yeah, that's the Hypno. That one's
Oh,
also amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, I have my eye on lots of visual stuff. Uh, I haven't been satisfied with a lot of it. Part of it is because I would like a good, crappy old like CRT TV or monitor pipe it into to just add to that aesthetic that I like. But
But
You
that's a
want
collector's
you
item
want
at this point.
RGB. You want
yeah, and
RGB
it's like
somewhere.
$60 in shipping on eBay or something. So like it'll be like $40 plus 60 to $80 in shipping. I'm like, I don't know if I can afford like
Go
$120
back
old
into the
CRT for
past
visual.
and tell your parents not to throw that old TV out.
They already have. They're all gone.
Oh no, we didn't go back into the past.
I know. I know.
You should do
It's
that.
yeah.
Um,
Beware
they're
tassels and
expensive
feathers.
though, and they're different voltages, aren't they? Video.
Oh, I need to get some tassels and feathers. That's not a bad idea.
That's a different conversation, isn't it?
Like, were you talking about the signals between that go into CRT TVs versus like HDMI?
But yeah,
Like,
so if you get one of those Hypno units, I'm sure you can control it, but
Yep.
can you control it with audio CD levels?
yes,
Yes.
And does it output
it
non-audio
it outputs
CD?
HDMI, VGA, and composite
Yep.
video.
But
Yep.
then can you not integrate it with other visual equipment unless you route it through it using those particular outputs?
You can integrate it with other visual equipment.
Okay, right.
It's a pretty awesome module. Yeah, that's the short answer. Like it can't. There's some
Anyway,
things it can't do in those lines, but it's very flexible.
I have more money than I am likely to be able to afford in the next 10 years, probably planned into cases already. So I should start thinking about visual hardware as well.
And they take up space. Like the oscilloscope is like this deep or something crazy, and like this wide or something. Like it's a honking big machine, and like you
Like
can
here,
see,
I have
I'm
two
hiding it
video
like
heads on
under
one.
the drum brute, but it sticks out really far. It's real awkward.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: if and when you perform outside of your basement, do you plan to travel with the oscilloscope?
That's a good question. So I would need to know more about the venue, but I wouldn't mind traveling with it because the thing is pretty tough.
Okay, they're pretty bulletproof. That's true.
It's
I
I
can
mean
imagine you get
it's
an
already
old
had brain surgery and recovered from it, so it's fine. It weighs 1,000,000 pounds. I'd basically if I was really worried about it, I'd build a little box so that the
you get an
knobs
old
don't
you
get
get an
broken off
overhead
in transit.
projector like they used to have in schools, and you put the oscilloscope under the overhead projector and you blast that onto the wall, or
Yeah.
you just get a lens and a mirror.
I don't. We never. I guess my school we had overhead projectors, but we never had oscilloscopes.
Yeah, we didn't have
But all
oscilloscopes
they do
either.
is shine light up towards the lens and then reflect it towards the wall. So if the oscilloscope's bright enough, it should just shine.
Yeah, like don't turn on the light in the projector.
Yeah.
Just use the oscilloscope. That could just
Yeah.
solve that. That kind of solves it. That's a real analog solution. But again, that only works in a relatively dark room.
Well,
Oh
let me
yeah, true.
see.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not that bright. Like it's bright enough in person, but considering like what you would want to project on the ceiling, it wouldn't be very
yeah,
bright.
yeah.
Wouldn't
I,
feel
I
like there's
suppose
lasers on the ceiling or anything.
what we're seeing is a meter or so dispersion, aren't we?
Like what I would probably do is put a camera on it. Like even at a concert or something live, I would have a camera
Yeah.
on it and
Okay. You and your
go through a
2020s
projector.
technology, it's not 1995 anymore.
I mean, if we get into a very small venue, and yeah, that would be pretty cool. But also, if it's that small, I mean, people could just see the oscilloscope, like
So
walk
so
over to it.
enthusiastic electrons is talking about lasers, and I am aware of a there was like a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo that was like a laser DJ laser thing, but it could also people like to use it to pop balloons because it was hot enough to make
Oh
to melt the
no, because it's a
plastic.
green laser.
Oh,
Yeah, but it's this really cool thing, and I was thinking that is pretty bright, and that might be a cool thing to do. But I mean, I think it's like $1,000 for the. It's a self-contained box, and it's all in one, and it's really cool. But it's $1,000, and that's
I
a
mean,
lot of
that would
money.
be something I would consider though. Like if I was playing live and I liked that look and it looked like if it could mimic that look enough, like on the ceiling or whatever, or
Hmm.
the wall behind me or something, yeah, that would be cool. I think that would be worth it. Um,
do you think you could also get away with a Jamiroquai hat?
I don't know what that means.
One of the famous hats that JK wears.
I I'll probably be wearing a beanie no matter how hot it is.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah.
You're not sort of for the big hat,
No,
massive.
it'll probably be a beanie uh, in Vegas.
Yeah, it's gonna be
But
like
whatever the yeah,
exceedingly hot, and you'll be wearing a
that,
warm hat.
but the rooms are all cold until people
That's
show
true.
up.
That's true.
Um,
You could get a
so I
mesh.
could get away with it for the first like 30 minutes, but after that it's gonna be like disgusting. Um, yeah, enthusiastic electrons. XY. Let's talk about XY real quick. Another reason I want some CRTs, like I actually want more than one. One to take apart and try not to electrocute myself,
Yeah, don't do that,
because the
please.
voltages there are like kind of deathy. But because they're XY, you can basically make your own oscilloscope out of a TV by connecting the right wires.
Finding, yeah, yeah.
I think you
Find,
need an amplifier too, but that's not too hard to make.
find one in the TV circuit somewhere.
Um, yeah, because I mean, the CRT is not much. In my simplistic brain, it's not more. It's not much different than a laser in that it's like a point of light that you can move around X, Y.
I think the
Um,
main thing with CRTs is you need to discharge them after use.
yeah,
So
you need to discharge it. So that's the big things. A
if you've
don't
got
mess with CRTs if you're
yeah,
not comfortable with electronics and you don't know how to discharge like capacitors, things like that. Because even an old CRT, you can like touch some
the
connections
wrong
on the
thing.
back, usually
Yeah,
around the CRT itself, and hospital.
yeah. If you've got a good process in place for test it, discharge, then you should be fine. But
Yep,
if you sort of
grounded
like
screwdriver.
yeah, yeah, juggling with the CRT like random wires.
No, there's specific like there's ways to do it, but yeah. Where's my show? It might be in Vegas. We'll see. Hopefully it is, but I don't know. My
But
expectations are low. If it's not, you'll know because I'll unpatch and we'll be playing weird stuff on the synthesizer.
so, quick question. You mentioned your semi-permanent patching that you are doing,
Yeah,
that, that we are assisting with right now.
yeah,
Yeah, in theory.
yeah. So it's
Um,
semi-permanent
it does
for
sound
that reason.
it
But I'm
sounds
also trying
quite
to
like
reduce the number of outboard gear by like keeping most of the mixing here, things like that.
it sounds quite like a Hex 7 patch. Yeah. There've been about 3 maybe or 4 instances where you played something and I felt like, oh, this is distinctly not a normal Hex 7 patch. Have you, in those cases, been aware that you've deliberately diverged from this style that you're doing now?
Yeah, so those tend to be less to do with the patch because this patch is really very flexible uh, in how it can sound. Like there was that mellow track I played the other day, same patch,
Right.
um, and it has more to do with what I'm sequencing and what I'm going for. So like if I don't want it to be harsh, I turn down the resonance. I use smoother sound sources, so maybe I'll use some really softened triangles or something. But like that's where you're getting that. A lot of it is sequence specific.
If you lost the memory on one device, what would destroy the most?
If I what?
Is it the pyramid? So do you keep all your patterns in one place?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're all in the pyramid for the most part, with the exception of the Evil Eye sequencer because yeah, it's its own thing.
Do you back up? Do you store them? Do you copy?
Yeah, sort of. Like I back it up like once every like 3 months or something. It's like all the stuff is on an SD card. Like if I turn it off real quick. Well, actually, let
Yeah,
me
right.
save
But if
this.
there's a
Save.
if there's a hardware problem, in theory, you don't have much to track back.
So if I turn this off, you can see somewhere around here. SD card, not too hard to
Yeah,
back up. And all the files are sort of named with the same.
with the same. Oh, my internet's dodgy.
It cut out for a minute. Yeah,
Oh,
but
okay.
I think we're back now.
Oh,
And
you know.
but you're muted. Heck, X7's silent.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll start talking. I'll let you know when we hear anything because we don't hear anything from your voice. Um, so I make a ton of sequences and I save none of them. Like I basically recreate from scratch sequences every time, and I don't have any saved on purpose. If there are any saved, um, it's not on purpose. Oh, man, this stream is falling apart. You're nothing. Oh, now I hear noise.
I'm gonna unplug this real
Oh,
quick and plug
you're
it back
back.
in.
You're back.
So
You're back.
yeah, but
You're
I'm using a
back.
different microphone.
Oh,
Hold on. When all else fails. Oh shoot. Assuming I can actually find the jack. There we go. All right, so I'm back there. Let's check the audio and see. Hello. Yes, cool. We're back. Yeah,
so yeah, you're back. Everything sounds great. Oh, and I
cool,
hear that.
cool.
So Marco asks, what sequencer does everyone use? I use something called the Erica Synth Black sequencer. This is the box for it. It has a jellyfish on it, which makes it really cool. And there's actually a jellyfish on the sequencer itself. I find that
I'm always
it's
too late
really
with the camera.
it's really cool because it replaced a lot of modules that I was using. I kind of miss using them, but I had a dedicated I had another sequencer and that could do some. It could generate. It was called Bloom, and it could generate sequences based on the notes you put in. Um,
Yeah,
and
that's
I
the
had
qubit, right?
yeah, the Qubit
Yep.
Bloom. I still love it. I don't think I'm ever going to sell it because it's fantastic. But and I also had a quantizer, um, and both of those functions really got replaced by the Erica Synth Black sequencer, um, because you can define your own scales, you can quantize things, you can adjust, you can transpose things on the fly, um, you can do all kinds of stuff, and the best part about the Black sequencer for me is that every note is there's 16 knobs on the front for the 16 notes, so the notes are instantly available and you can change and edit each note, the parameters for each note individually with all 16 knobs. So
That's cool.
that's my baby.
Yeah, it's. I think your love for it is similar to my fondness for the Squirt Pyramid. I wish some of the hardware was a little different, but it gets the job done. That's what's important. All right, I think it's. Oh, we've been going for a while. I'm gonna
I just want,
call it.
yeah, I just want to
Oh,
say real quick for Schmooster's representing XOR Electronics. He I know he's a big fan of
Oh, yeah,
NerdSeek because he actually has my NerdSeek.
yeah. And your keyring is on my. keyring,
Oh, it's literally on your keyring.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
and that is some Dior silver. But that's more important. I like it. It went on there today. It fits, and it does not hurt me when I sit down, which is important for a keyring.
Yeah, so sequencers like Erica Black seems to be really popular right now. I don't know if it's a phase, but it seems like a pretty awesome sequencer. It would be what I would be reaching for if I was going to get a sequencer for a Euro rack box. Um,
You want to get another second?
but I quite like my pyramid. My stuff's already in it, and I've got a MIDI to CV, and I like MIDI. I like the pyramid specifically, not necessarily for Eurorack stuff, but because it can control an actual ton of different gear, um, and obviously it's something that I like.
Well,
So
it's got a really good layout as well. Like for what it contains, it's got a lot, and you'd be hard pushed to fit that in a reasonable size for Eurorack. And the Home of tries, but it's really scaled down, kind of.
you know what? I 100% bet this could be in the same footprint as the endorphins ground control. Like it's really not that. There's actually less stuff on here than the ground control, so I think it could be done.
Still not small.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I love it. I wish it had more CV outs and a little more control on how I could use them, but whatever. It's got like 64 channels of MIDI out or something crazy. 32 of those are hardware. The other 32 are USB.
Maybe the Erica Black's wider than the Pyramid, even. Like, not that they're comparable formats, but
you mean the endorphins?
no, Erica Black, just because that was also held up on Robbie's corner and mentioned in the chat, and I just saw it.
2 SQ1s and a no control. The no control is sick. The SQ1s are pretty good, but I haven't tried them. I would love one at some point, but all right, I gotta go because I want to watch TV.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. We've been going for a while. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Yeah, this has been great.
It's been a really fun show. Yeah, I love you guys.
Do you have your synth hooked up right now? Is that why you've got your headphone mic or no?
I do, but it's not plugged into my computer, unfortunately.
Okay, so I'm just gonna
play us out.
But I need someone to hold up the sign.
That's
I want the sign off.
We need the sign. No. Wrong sign. By the